Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and I've finally been able to put up my video on how to make Vietnamese baguettes. So what is the difference between a Vietnamese baguette and a regular French baguette? So a Vietnamese baguette has a distinct thin, crispy crust, and the inside is light and airy and chewy. It took me many tries to be able to get this perfect. So hopefully through this video I will be able to give you a few tips, a few tricks that you may be able to learn and be able to make these beautiful yummy breads at home for yourself and your family. So this particular video I hand kneaded the dough because I know a few of you don't have a stand mixer at home. So I did this particularly for you. So I hope you will be able to do this for yourself at home and also learn from it as I did, because I usually use a stand mixer. So this was a learning point for myself as well. All the ingredients that you need I've put in the description. And one very important thing is I find that you will need a food scale to weigh the ingredients, because that is how you are going to get a good result for your bread, by weighing out the ingredients. So once we have everything together, let's get started. First off, we're going to weigh the water. So I just used room temperature filtered water here, weighing out 355 grams of water. Then I measure out about 10 grams of sugar. And then what I'm going to do is put this in the microwave for about 40 seconds. So you want the water to be warm. Then we're going to measure out our flour, 600 grams of bread flour or all-purpose flour. I've used both and it comes out to be the same. 600 grams of flour will make about 8 loaves of bread. And then some salt, and then here I'm using instant yeast. So when we use instant yeast, you just need to mix it in with the flour. You don't need to proof it. So the next ingredient is what is going to make your crust crispy, and it's 10 grams of vinegar, and in particular a 5% acetic acid. So most of the vinegar you'll buy will be 5%, but just double check. And I like to use this particular one because it's vinegar made from cane sugar. So you're going to directly put the vinegar in the water that you've heated up, and then you're going to pour it into your dough, then mix with some unsalted butter, about 30 grams here. And then you're going to mix it well until it kind of gets together, and then you're going to get your hand in to knead and get the dough and the liquid all mixed up. So once it's nice and all kind of the dough gets all wet, you can put it on a surface and then start to knead by hand. So you're going to knead by pushing the dough with the bottom of your hand and the palm of your hand, the bottom palm. So you just kind of push it and then spin around and push it. And you're going to have to do this for a good 10 minutes. And 10 minutes, so after 10 minutes, we're just going to let the dough rest. Plus your hand will need some resting. So after about 5 minutes resting, the dough is a little bit more tight, but you can see that it's not ready. When you stretch it and it rips right away, the dough's not ready. You need to knead it again for another 10 minutes. And then after that, rest again for 5 minutes. And then you will see after that, the dough is nice and stretchy, and you can pull it a lot before it rips. So here I kneaded it again for a good 10 minutes. So that's a secret to making your bread chewy and airy. You have to knead it really well. Then, so when it's finished, you want it until you can stretch the dough without it ripping. That's the consistency you want. I actually should have kneaded this more, but I was too tired, so I gave up. So now I just put some oil on the pan, and I got my dough in a circle and rubbed it and put some oil on top of the dough, so as it rises it doesn't stick to the pan. Then we're going to cover your dough, and I proof it in the oven. I turn on to the lowest setting for about 30 seconds, turn it off. I put the dough in the oven and let it proof. So for about 30 to 45 minutes, or the key word here is until the dough is double in size. So everybody's kitchen is different. So it might take longer for you, but mine took about 30 to 45 minutes that way. And when the dough comes out like that, you'll see beautiful and airy and all risen up. Now, like I said, this recipe, I can yield a good 8 loaves of bread. But especially if you're going through all this work and you're making, you might as well make like 8 loaves of bread. Most recipes I've seen are only 6 loaves, and I have 7 people in my house, so that wouldn't work. So I had to increase the flour and the water and all that stuff. So this was quite a bit of work for me, but I was able to find the right ratio for it. So here we are. So one thing I found is once you cut the dough into triangles like this, you don't want to roll it up or anything like that. You just press down to get all the air bubbles out, and you want to make a triangle. So the triangle there, you roll out the dough, and at the edge of the triangle, you want to spread it out a little bit on the thin side. All right, so there we are, nice thin edge. And then you want to start at the tip of the triangle. We'll move the dough down a little bit so you can see. And you're going to wrap it in. And then you're going to pinch the 2 edges. So you're going to have kind of like a big belly in the middle. And then you're going to pinch the edges of the dough. So as you're rolling, you're pinching the edges of the dough all the way to the ends. And then when you're at the end, you want to pinch all the edges together so that there's no gaps. So you pinch it all together, kind of get the dough all together, and then you're going to roll the dough by rolling the tips of the dough to kind of make it slightly tip, but not too pointy. And there you go, a nice dough. And then so I have the baguette tray here, and I put it on top of a baking tray because I find that in my particular oven, the bread will brown too fast. I have your very basic oven. I don't have any fancy oven, so mine is very basic and very small. So I put it on a baking tray like that. So again here, I'll show you again. Once you do this, you'll get the hang of it. You just kind of roll and then use your fingers and kind of press at the edge. And if that belly in the middle is too big, you kind of press in the middle and just kind of press it down. And then so that's what you want the rolls to look. So at the edges, they're kind of a little bit pointy, and then you have kind of a belly in the middle. And here we go again, show you again. There, my belly's getting a bit big, so I just kind of press down in the middle, just kind of even it out a little bit. So you can continue on and do all of the dough like this. I wanted to show you here, this is going up to the last piece of dough that I did. You can see how it's risen already, again, nice and airy. So I proof the bread dough in the oven again. So I turn it to the lowest setting for about 30 seconds and turn it off, and I put my bread in there. So you proof, but make sure you put a bowl of hot boiling water in there to keep the bread moist. And so you want the bread to rise up to double or triple in size, so about 1 hour. If you notice the tray on the bottom there, I just put the loaves of bread on just a regular tray with some parchment paper. Just for people who don't have baguette tray, you can still bake it on a regular tray. At this point, remove the bread from the oven and then preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Everybody's oven is different, so you have to see how well your bread browns with the temperature. You may need to increase the temperature maybe 10 to 20 degrees. Just pay attention to how brown it gets. So as the oven is preheating, we're going to slash our bread. Here I'm using a razor blade, and you need a spray bottle of water. We're going to spray the dough, and then we're going to slash it at about a 45-degree angle. This is my favorite part. If you slash your bread and the bread starts to deflate, then it means you've overproofed the bread. So you've proofed the bread too long. So you want the bread to still stay springy right after you slash it. So after you've slashed all the bread, We're going to spray the bread with some oil. So I have some vegetable oil in a spray bottle, and I'm spraying and then spreading it over this. This will help the bread brown nicely. It's now ready to bake the bread. We're going to place a tray of boiling water in the bottom rack, and then you're going to bake the bread in the middle of the oven. When you put the bread in, you're going to quickly spray a few spritz of water with your water bottle into the oven. This is what is going to allow your bread to be thin and crispy. So for my particular oven, I have to bake it at about 25 or 26 minutes. So after the first 5 minutes, you're going to open the oven and quickly spray again with some water and then close it. After another 5 minutes, so that'll be 10 minutes of baking, you're going to do the same thing, spray the bread and then close the oven again. Halfway through baking, we're going to rotate the bread pan, and then we're going to take out the water bath. When there's about 5 minutes left, I like to turn the bread over so we can get the underside of the bread brown. So when the bread is done, about 25 to 26 minutes, you remove it, and then what I love to do is to brush a little bit of butter on top of the bread as it's nice and hot. This will give the bread a nice glossy shine and a good brown color, so you can see beautiful colored bread there. So this is the bread that I baked on the parchment paper without the bread, so you can see the bottom is not as nice, and the one with the bread tray, it has a nice rounded bottom. And here you can hear the crisp of the crust, and you can see as I pull the bread apart, the crust is nice and thin and the inside is nice and light. So here again, you get the same results, but just the bread doesn't look as fancy as the other one, but you get the same thing. Now some troubleshooting. I've done so much of this, I've done a lot of troubleshooting. Why is my crust thick and hard? Well, first thing was I didn't put enough water. There wasn't enough liquid in the dough, so it was a bit dry. And then I didn't knead it long enough. Another issue that came up was that when I first took out the bread, it was nice and crispy, but after 5-10 minutes as it cools down, it became kind of soft and soggy. So I found out that I wasn't baking it long enough. It needed an extra 1 to 2 more minutes of baking to be able to hold a crisp, so it didn't bake long enough. So there you have it. So within about 3 hours, you would have some nice, fresh, crispy bread to eat. It is delicious. So stay tuned. I will be putting up a video on how to make these breads by using the stand mixer, which is much easier. So I'll see you at the next video. See you then.